Sheriff Mafuni. And years later, my wife designed a movie for Spielberg called 1941, and Mafuni's in it. And so I go over to the studio, and I go on the stage, and I say, "Excuse me, Mr. Mafuni. My name's John Landis, and years ago, and you knew exactly what I was. And like 2 years later at the Venice Film Festival, there was a dinner in his honor, and he insisted I sit by him. And he kept telling people things in Japanese, and they'd laugh and laugh. And you can't go, "What did he say?" But apparently he was telling everyone, "I killed him before he was finished."
Flash forward, okay? When did you decide to make your first film? And why schlock?
Very quickly, not like both of my stories, very, very quick. I'm in Europe 2 years, and I worked mostly in Spain, but I also worked in France and in Italy, and a lot of movies. I mean, sometimes I work a day, sometimes I work a week. So many movies. It was a wonderful time because there were the productions everywhere, and anyway. Brian Hutton, the director of Kelly's Heroes, was going to make a movie in London called, it was released as X, Y, and Z. It starred Elizabeth Taylor, Michael Caine, and Susanna York. I never saw it. You know. Anybody? And I don't know, anyway, he's going to direct this movie at Bournemouth, MGM Bournemouth. And he said, "John, you want to be my first AD, officially?" Yes, I mean, that's a big job on a big movie. I said, "Absolutely." And he said, "Okay, well, I learned I must join the DGA, the Directors Guild of America Union. And in order for me to get a work permit in the UK, I must be a member of the union in America." So, I fly home for the first time in 2 years, and I go to the DGA, and this is so long ago now, but basically, they wouldn't accept me as a member because even though I hadn't put in the hours, there's a whole method of getting in, of working non-union, and then all these hours and all this stuff. And someone there suggested, "Why don't you become part of the assistant director program?" I said, "What's that?" "Well, that's the DGA trainee program where you start as a PA and then you become a third, and then a second, and then a first." It's a long process. And so I said, "Well, but they want me to be the first." And they said, "Look, if you can get in the program, you can go to London and be a first, but then you have to come back here and be a third." So I went, "Okay, fine, fine," because I was, one, stupid, and two, I really wanted the job. So I took the test. There was a test. There still is. It's still going on to do this. And the test was really silly. It was things like a pan is a cooking utensil, a bad review, a lateral camera move, it's like, So I took the test, I got the highest score, and I'm very excited because I'm going to go back to London and work for Brian. And then I get a call, and the president of the Directors Guild at that time was Robert Aldrich. Robert Aldrich is a fascinating director who made some great movies and some weird movies, but a really interesting man. And did you ever see him? Did you ever meet Bob Aldrich?
No, I met his daughter in Turin.
His daughter?
Yeah, because we had that retrospective there. Okay.
Well, I don't know his daughter, but Bob had eyebrows like Mephistopheles. They're like, and he was big, kind of heavy guy. Big. no-nonsense guy. And he was the president of the guild. I get a call from Robert Aldrich. I go, Jesus. So I go to him, and in his office is the old DJ. It wasn't even the new building yet. And there's Bob Aldrich, and then sitting on the couch is Mervyn LeRoy. Mervyn LeRoy was one of the founders of the guild, famous producer and director. Most famous credit is probably Wizard of Oz, I guess. He produced and directed a lot of the Wizard of Oz. But these are big, old Hollywood, established guys. And Mr. Aldrich was very apologetic and said, "We just found out that you have no high school diploma." I said, "Yeah. Well, I'm sorry, but to be eligible to take the test, you have to have a college degree. You have to have a BA. Well, okay, but I already took the test. I know, but you're disqualified. What? So I was disqualified. So I was so angry. And Jim O'Rourke, my friend, was in town, and I said, "Let's go to a movie." He said, "Okay." So we go to Hollywood Boulevard, and we saw Joan Crawford's last movie, Trog. Have you ever seen Trog?
No.
It's one of those terrible movies that's wonderful because it's so bad. And it's about an ape, and Joan Crawford. Trog, come Trog. And Trog is like this 60-year-old guy, kind of overweight, wearing, I swear to God, fur trunks, fur bathing trunks, fur booties. For some reason, he has fur around his wrist. And I think it's an old armature from 2001, one of the Stuart Freeburn apes, but it's ridiculous. He looks really funny. I mean, it's terrible. It's real schlock. And I said, Jesus Christ, I could make a movie that bad, so I went home and I wrote schlock. And at that time, all the money I had in the world by then was about $120,000. It ends up, schlock cost $60,000. We shot at 35mm Panavision cameras, and it's not Union, obviously. And probably the most important thing about schlock is I was 21, and I found a 20-year-old makeup artist who lived with his parents in Covina named Rick Baker, who is clearly brilliant. I was a mailboy at Fox when they made, Beneath the Planet of the Apes. And I knew John Chambers. I knew a lot about makeup. I'd worked on a lot of movies. And this kid was so much more talented than all those guys. Like, whoa. So that's the important thing about schlock. And it's the classic thing. You put all your money in a movie, you lose all of it. And it did do one thing, which is, what do? I'm a director. And you could say that because I had directed a movie. The next time I directed a movie was 6 years later, which was Kentucky Fried Movie, and then Animal House the same year. So, and then Animal House, and then I worked pretty steady. But that's it.
I would like to ask you a question. You are an incredible cinephile. How many movies did you watch a day while growing up, and how did you keep watching movie while you were working at such an intense pace?
Well, American television, there were 3 national channels, NBC, ABC, CBS, and thousands of local channels all across the country. And those local channels in the 50s and 60s were desperate to fill the hours. And so Hollywood started selling them their old movies. And people like Marty Scorsese again, Francis, all these guys, we all got our classic movie education on television because it was very common to see old movies. And then there was So we saw tons of movies. To this day, I see a movie and I go, oh, I didn't know that was in color. You know? But that was one. And two, I made a point of seeing movies. You went out there. There used to be revival houses. You remember those? They'd show Marx Brothers, Laurel and Hardy, and Hitchcock, and classic, so-called classic films, Casablanca. And what's interesting about the product is when you look at a movie like Casablanca, I mean, that movie's perfect. That movie could be made right now, and it would be, you know, you could just watch that tomorrow. It's a great movie, and it works on every level. And it's kind of shocking when you think that Hollywood, for almost 60 years, you had 7, sometimes 9 companies, major studios. Each one of them made between 40 and 55 feature films a year for 40 years, and they're all watchable. Most of them are pretty good. It's still astonishing. Stephen Schatz wrote a book called The Genius of the System, which is about the old Hollywood studio system. And even though it was not ideal, and it was run by tough son-of-a-bitch guys, they made astonishing movies. The work is amazing. And what happened was, the American film business became the international film business. I mean, you know, you have American directors like Hitchcock or Jean Renoir, or, you know, I mean, they all got Lubitsch, Billy Wilder. It became the place you wanted to make movies because it had all the best equipment and all that stuff. And then UFO was pretty spectacular, but Hitler saw the destruction of that. But I don't know, you make an effort. How do you see movies now? You make an effort to see movies. I used to see, I would say until I was 60, I saw every movie that came out. I would go to the theater and see every movie that came out. And I had a moment with Joe Dante in the 70s where we went to see a movie. I won't tell you the name. It was directed by a friend. We went to see the movie at a matinee. We watched it for about a half hour. And Joe turned to me and he said, you know, life's too short. And it was a real epiphany, a revelation. I thought, you can walk out of a movie? You can do that? You know? I used to be such a fascist about it. I meant, you know, we missed the titles. We have to wait till it's over and then go in, you know. I used to be a real Nazi about seeing a movie. And then I realized I don't have to see every movie. You know? Although, every so often, I mean, the last movie I saw, I'm sure they're great movies, but the last movie I saw that really excited me, wow, this is really extraordinary, was Roma, the Mexican. It's like that is truly a great work. And you realize if you were a cineast in the 60s, movies were coming out all the time by Fellini and by Bergman and by all these other guys, Roger Corman guys, and by still studio, George Cukors and those guys. I mean, it was an exciting fucking time. The 60s and 70s, it's astonishing what good movies were made then.
You mentioned Roger Corman.